I'm Eric Anderson. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, a new snapshot on the drought and California attitudes. The big worry for residents after Governor Jerry Brown called for mandatory water cuts.
The Chargers and Raiders hire former 49er president for the next steps in the Carson City Stadium. And the city of Carson gets the land for the proposed stadium site. But the Chargers say they're reviewing the financial plan for a new stadium in San Diego. I'm Peggy Pico with details. And...
Excuse me, sir. Are you Chief Chris Kyle?
Yes, sir.
The widow of American sniper Chris Kyle talks with us about coping with service member deaths and recovery for military families.
By not knowing what is and how can I prevent it, they can easily get infected.
Mexican police are one needle mistake away from a bloodborne disease. We look at the UC San Diego program helping officers in Tijuana survive an occupational hazard. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Dwayne Brown is off. A new survey shows nearly 2/3 of Californians support Governor Jerry Brown's urban water reduction plan. The field poll is the first measure of public opinion on the drought since last month's executive order. 66% say the drought is extremely serious. Another 44% say it will be difficult for them to cut household water use. And 70% said it would be a serious problem for them if water districts raised water bills. Under pressure from U.S. safety regulators, Takeda Corporation expanded its recall of faulty airbags to 34 million vehicles.
So as far as we know, this is the largest recall in auto history. Others are doing research and suggest it could be one of the largest, if not the largest, in all of consumer recalls.
The problem with the airbag is with the airbag inflators. They can explode violently when they deploy and spray metal fragments into the vehicle. 6 deaths and more than 100 injuries have been linked to that flaw. To find out if your car is on the recall list, go to kpbs.org. We have a link to the recall site. San Diego's Charter Review Committee is looking for ways to update the document that acts as the city's constitution, but there's no way for the public to know what changes are going to be discussed when. KPBS reporter Claire Tregeser has the story, and she joins us now. Claire, remind us what the Charter Review Committee is all about.
It's a temporary committee of the San Diego City Council. Its task is to go through the city's charter and look for places that need updates or rewrites. For example, the charter makes reference to a city manager, even though we no longer have one. But the committee is also considering bigger changes, including ending free trash pickup for homeowners and altering the way elected officials are paid.
Okay, tell us what the head of the committee promised when it first started to meet.
Council President Sherry Leitner had said each month the committee would focus on a different topic. She also said she would publish a schedule of those meetings so the public could know what was being discussed when. At the start of the March meeting, she quickly listed her proposed schedule.
Our agenda can now consider clusters of related charter sections. For instance, today's agenda considers some preliminary and time-sensitive items. In April, I want us to consider sections of interest in Charter Article 7, which is finance. May will be Article 5, which is the executive and administrative service.
And she went on like that. Then at the same meeting, City Councilman Chris Cate responded.
Are we notifying or noticing the public in any way about those meetings, I guess, tomorrow, about the subject matters and subject areas in the monthly meetings? Is there a memo you can distribute and we can forward on?
As soon as we finalize that, yes.
Okay, perfect.
And so then what happened?
That schedule was never published. Steve Hadley, the Charter Committee's consultant, says that's because the schedule of meetings keeps being revised. He says some items have taken longer than they thought, which pushes back the schedule. He also said the Charter Committee will hold a special meeting for the public on June 11th at 6 p.m. There, anyone can bring up things they'd like to change in the charter.
KPBS reporter Claire Tregeser. Thanks, Claire. Experts from a UC San Diego program are helping Tijuana police with an occupational hazard, the health risk connected to broken syringes that are confiscated from drug addicts. KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg explains why some police don't understand where the danger is.
Tijuana neighborhood known as La Zona Norte, you don't have to look very hard to find people using drugs. On the sidewalk of a busy street, a man injects himself in the neck. Right around the corner, in the middle of a pile of garbage, another man shoots up. There are used syringes everywhere. When Tijuana police find syringes on someone, they typically break them apart or throw them in the trash. That's what they were taught to do. But these practices are risky. In fact, in a recent survey, 15% of Tijuana police officers said they've suffered a needle stick injury. Officer Jonathan Martinez says it's dangerous out here.
Normally, we don't get courses in how to avoid becoming infected by syringes and other things.
Until now, that is. A unique program is underway to change the way Tijuana police handle syringes and drug users.
¿Por qué se llaman picaderos? ¿O por qué les decimos picaderos? Exactamente.
At the police academy in Tijuana, Sub-Inspector Cesar Quiñones talks to a room full of officers about places where they're likely to encounter IV drug users, like shooting galleries.
Pues muchos de nosotros tomamos la precaución de tener guantes.
Quiñones says many officers who enter shooting galleries wear gloves for protection, but many others don't.
Levante la mano los que dicen que es falso.
Next, Quiñones shows a slide with statements about how HIV is spread. He asks officers to raise their hand if they think mosquitoes transmit the disease.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
A lot of hands go up. And as Quiñones goes through his presentation, officers have a lot of questions. Dr. Eliane Bustamante gives him a little HIV 101.
If I have contact of any kind with secretions like blood and semen from someone who's infected, I can become contaminated too.
During a break in the training, Bustamante says she's surprised about the officers' lack of knowledge.
They seem really interested on the topic, but there's several questions that I thought, well, that's really obvious. But no, they seem really interested on the basic topics like what's HIV.
Bustamante says what officers don't know can hurt them.
By not knowing what is and how can I prevent it, they can easily get infected.
During the training, officers learn how HIV is transmitted and how to handle needles safely in the field. They're told that federal law allows people to possess syringes without a prescription. The law also lets people carry up to 50 milligrams of heroin for personal use. The class introduces officers to the concept that drug users aren't scum. They're human beings who need help with their addiction. The trainings began in February. Eventually, the entire Tijuana police force will take the 3-hour class. So far, about 300 officers have done so. Sub-Inspector Quiñones says when he goes out in the field now, he sees officers acting differently.
A como estamos tomando la clase y a como se estamos impartiendo y le estamos resaltando que lo más importante es su seguridad.
We've emphasized in the class that the most important thing is their safety during their shift, and we're noticing that they're changing and they're respecting the law about syringes.
The training is the brainchild of UC San Diego's Global Division of Public Health. It's the first partnership between an American university and a Mexican police force.
So this is what Comandante Madrid gave me in partnership with our project.
Division Chief Stephanie Strathey says research has shown that trainings can change officers' attitudes and knowledge.
But nobody's ever studied to see whether or not it would change the behaviors of the police officers. And we'll be following 500 police officers in Tijuana over 2 years to see whether or not this intervention works.
The status quo is clearly risky. The HIV rate among IV drug users in Tijuana ranges from 4% for men to 10% for women. Kenny Goldberg, KPBS News.
KPBS video journalist Katie Shuloff helped produce that story. A land deal in Carson may be the next step in building a new home for the San Diego Chargers. The transaction closed today, and that land would be used for a shared NFL stadium for the Chargers and the Oakland Raiders. The team's also hired a former San Francisco 49ers executive to spearhead the next steps in that project. Now, this comes less than 24 hours after a San Diego group touted its plan to build a new stadium here without a tax increase. But as Peggy Pico explains, it still involves hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money.
Even though the Chargers appear to be moving ahead with a stadium plan in Los Angeles, team officials say they're still reviewing the $1.1 billion financial plan for a new stadium in San Diego. Joining me with a breakdown of that financial plan is my guest, Adam Day, chairman of the Citizens Stadium Advisory Group. And Adam, this finance plan of $1.1 billion, how would that money be spent?
Essentially, the construction cost for a new stadium includes $950 million for the stadium itself, $144 million for parking structure, $60 million in stadium-related infrastructure, which gets you to about $1.1 billion. And then if you include the value of 60 acres of city-owned land, that brings you to about $1.3 billion.
And this financing plan touts no tax increases, no general fund increases, and it doesn't rely on a general fund money. But there's a lot of public money involved in this, $121 million each from the city and county, and $225 million from the sale of city land. So give us a sense of the buy-in that the advisory group had to get or did get for using these public dollar contributions.
Well, our plan was to develop a financing plan that works, that can actually be financed, that's fair for the city, the county, the taxpayers, and the team. But it's not our job to negotiate. So essentially what we've put together is a framework of a plan. We've identified over $1.4 billion in revenues to fund the construction costs of $1.1 billion. So there's over $300 million in surplus revenues. And essentially, we've provided those recommendations to the mayor so he has flexibility as he sits down with the team to hash out the final deal.
What's the return on investment for the city of San Diego?
Well, we think this is a good investment for the city. First and foremost, the city currently spends between $11 and $14 million per year to pay for the operations and maintenance of Qualcomm Stadium. Our recommendation has that level going down to about $7 million a year. So essentially, the city will be saving money from its general fund budget. It's also a good investment for the team because they'll be able to recoup their investment, although we've asked them to contribute slightly more than they've offered in the past. The cost of the facility has increased over 300% in the last 10 years, and so we're asking the team to share in that cost increase. But there are opportunities for them to generate additional revenue too.
Well, sure, and let's talk about that because the Chargers, you have down for at least $100 million more than they said they would originally contribute. Why do you think they'll contribute more?
Well, as I said, in the last 10 years, the cost of the facility has increased 300%. Now, that's not because of inflation. That's because there's a new business model that the NFL and their franchises use. And so we've asked the team to, or we've recommended to the mayor that the team increase its cost by 50%. So we think that's a reasonable cost-sharing percentage for the team and the city to split. But there's also new ways for them to generate additional revenue with a new modern stadium, naming rights, advertising within the stadium, new premium seats, etc. So
sure.
Lots of opportunities for the team to recoup its investment.
Under the plan, the $173 million, some of that would come from, the $173 million would actually come from the Chargers' rent going back to construction bonds. How would that work?
Well, essentially, our recommendation has them paying $1 million in rent per game, or roughly $10 million per year. If you take that over 30 years in a net present value calculation, you can generate $173 million up front. Essentially, we would go to the bond market, capture that revenue, and apply that towards the construction costs.
How does that compare to what other teams make?
It's in the middle, if not on the low end. Minnesota Vikings pay about $8.5 million per year. San Francisco 49ers pay about $24 million per year. So we're recommending $10 million per year. When you consider parking, concessions, and merchandise, that makes the team's rent very comparable.
Now, when you're talking about $100 million in funding through tickets, parking surcharges, and the personal seat licenses, how much are you anticipating that ticket prices and those surcharges will actually go up? How much is it going to cost?
Well, the ticket surcharge we recommend is $5 per Charger game, $2 for every other game. Parking surcharge is recommended at $3 per vehicle. That's be less than half the national average. It's less than 5% essentially of a ticket or parking charge. We think it's important for the fans to share in the cost of this new facility.
Now, the mayor says he would like this stadium deal to go before the voters, but the current financing plan is it's basically designed to avoid going before the voters. So why should the public support this financing plan?
Well, we didn't design the plan to avoid a vote. We're agnostic on a vote. We're not recommending a vote, but we're not recommending a vote. There's nothing in our plan that's legally required for a vote or financially required for a vote. But that's certainly a decision for the mayor and the team to make together.
Okay, so why should the public support the plan then?
Well, I think this is a very good plan for the team, the city, the county, and the taxpayers. It's important for the civic fabric of San Diego. We fought hard to save the opera. I think it's important for our culture here in San Diego to have an NFL franchise team as well.
All right, the entire financing plan is on our website, kpbs.org. Adam Day, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
San Diego's Tennis Association is hosting wounded warriors and vets from around the country this week. They're in Balboa Park for a tennis camp.
I thought you were ready. I love competition. Having competitive kinds of games make it a lot more fun.
Bruce Patton may have lost his legs in Vietnam in 1970.
He got me with the soft stuff.
But he didn't lose his fire.
You don't beat Bruce, don't complain to me.
A 64-year-old wheelchair athlete finds tennis offers challenges that keep things interesting.
I think it's the one sport that requires the most skills. And so I think that it is difficult to do.
But this Wounded Warrior Camp is about more than tennis. It was conceived as a way to help military troops and vets heal.
Don't worry, I got another one.
Steve Kappas is director of the San Diego District Tennis Association. He says some wounds are obvious, others are not. He hopes the camp opens that path to wellness.
I think one of the greatest benefits of being a tennis player is the tennis family that you can plug into that can provide another avenue for support, another lifeline to improving their quality of life. So before they leave San Diego, we put them in touch with people in their own hometowns so that they can go home and plug right in.
Participants don't pay to attend. Sponsors pick up the tab. More than 100 people applied. Only 60 got accepted. As the nation honors fallen service members on Memorial Day, there is a new memoir from the widow of the man known as the American Sniper. Peggy Pico talks about her life, love, and loss.
Chris Kyle is best known from his memoir and the Academy Award-winning film American Sniper. His story details 4 tours of duty in Iraq as a specially trained U.S. Navy SEAL.
Excuse me, sir. Are you Chief Chris Kyle?
Yes, sir.
Can I tell you something? Your dad, he's a hero. He saved my life.
Kyle was killed in the U.S. while helping a troubled veteran. His widow, Taya Kyle, joins us to talk about recovery in her new memoir, American Wife: Love, War, Faith, and Renewal. Also joining us is psychologist Karen Schoenfeld-Smith, who works with military families at the San Diego Vet Center. And Taya, your book offers an intimate look at what it's like in the days, hours, and months following your husband's unexpected death in 2013. What helped you the most during this time?
I think really my faith is the thing that helped me more than anything, and my friends and family who are just truly amazing. I couldn't have done it without either one of those two things.
You write about telling your children that their father died, and it was really quite touching. How old were they when he died, and how did you approach the subject with them?
You know, they're elementary school age. They still are. I really had no plan, no clear plan. I just knew that I had to tell them, and I think it's every parent's worst nightmare, besides something happening to your kids, is telling them something that you know is going to change their path forever. You know it's going to break their little hearts, and your instinct as a parent is to protect them and to shelter them. So I go through it in the book a little bit more about what I was thinking I could do, but in the end I really just saw them and sat down with them and struggled through trying to tell them.
How are they doing today?
Great. They really are. They're so good. They have strong faith, and they have a foundation where they knew that their dad loved them. You know, it's been said that people will forget what you say and what you do, but they never forget the way somebody made you feel. And they know that their dad loved them and was so proud of them, held them to a high standard, but didn't expect perfection. You know, he really gave them everything that a man could give a kid.
Karen, how is the death of a sudden death like this of a service member different from military families than, let's say, other families?
Well, a lot of times military families they have to move quite a bit, so they need to develop supports in their current location. So those kind of things affect military families a little bit differently. Also, when there is a loss, sometimes in military families, there has been the discussion already that that's a possibility. So there is some resources that are set in place, including military chaplains, the casualty and call officer, that can help families immediately deal with the traumatic loss that comes from these losses.
And Karen, what's the best way to help a family like Taya's family or military family recover from a sudden death, whether it's while they're in duty or in this case when they were done with the tour?
That's certainly a big question, and a lot of times it is meeting the family where they are, what kind of supports do they need, and being available to them quite readily. So making yourself available to them at the pace that they need in the location where they need to be seen, whether it's in their family home or in your office, and helping them recognize and accept where they are in the grief process.
And Taya, did writing this book help you and your children recover?
It didn't help my children at all, because it took me away from them more than giving me time with them. But I think that it'll be good in the long run, that we won't have to rely solely on my memory, but my memory is fresh enough that I could put it on paper and preserve it, which I think was really healing too, so that I don't have to carry it around worrying that I might someday forget something. I'm sure you see that a lot too. And, you know, Karen's so right about the grieving process and meeting the family where they are. When you said that, I thought that was brilliant, because everybody's grief process is different, and there's no right or wrong way to do it, but, you know, just showing up and allowing them to grieve in whatever part of the process they're in is brilliant.
And you're doing pretty well here talking about this. Is it still difficult for you to talk about?
It is. I think that, and Karen, you'd probably agree too, that it's one of those things where it's unpredictable. At least that's what I've found. So I can talk about something today and not cry at all, and yet tomorrow I might talk about it and just find that it hits me in a different way and I'm crying. So it's just very unpredictable.
And Karen, where can military families go to get help? Is there a number they can call if they're experiencing a loss like this?
Absolutely. The number is available, I believe, on your website, but it's also 202-461-6530, and that's available all across the United States.
Yeah, and we also have links for more resources for military families dealing with the death of a service member at kpbs.org. Taya, Kyle, and Karen Schoenfeld-Smith, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
I'm Gwen Eiffel. On the next News Hour, a look at the state of financially strapped black colleges and universities. That's Tuesday on the PBS News Hour.
At USD, there is an eye-opening showcase from a Dutch painter and printmaker. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando shows us Rembrandt, a decade of brilliance.
USD's Rembrandt, A Decade of Brilliance, allows you to look over the shoulder of an artist who's been dead for centuries by showcasing multiple print series where you can see how Rembrandt explored light and shadow as he experimented with plates, inks, and papers.
The last 10 years that he was making prints, they're some of the most productive years of his life as a printmaker, and he was really playing with the possibilities of print and pushing the boundaries of what print could do. And so this show is really interesting and an incredibly unique opportunity to see Rembrandt during his most experimental period, but in a really unique way, which is you get to see multiple impressions of the same work so that you can see how he changed his works from impression to impression. So you get to see that he was playing with inks and the different kinds of papers that you could use and the different way the color of the paper would change the mood of the print.
Take a print called The Entombment. It's a scene from the Passion where Christ is about to be put in his tomb. In this first print, Rembrandt allows all the details of the tomb and the people surrounding Christ to be clearly defined. But in another impression, there's a dramatic difference.
Rembrandt is using ink to kind of obliterate most of the image, and all you see is this kind of flicker of light. And in a way, it's kind of this incredibly evocative demonstration of the light of Christ being almost completely snuffed out in this moment as he's being put into the tomb.
The details of these prints are best appreciated when you see the original work. Erin Sullivan-Main says a digital copy doesn't offer the same experience, and she offers magnifying glasses at the exhibit to help prove her point.
Rembrandt is the master of detail. He really encourages you to get up close and to look at what he's doing. And what's so rewarding about this is it really teaches you to really examine and to train your eye to see things that it didn't see before.
These breathtaking prints are on display at USD's Founders Hall through Sunday. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
There is another chance for rain in San Diego. We may see some showers by the coast on Thursday. Temperatures in the 60s, cloudy skies in the 60s in the inland valleys, sunny in the mountains. It's going to cool down over the weekend, and hot and breezy in the desert with 80s and 70s expected. Here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. Tomorrow on Midday Edition, for all the starving artists out there, an SDSU lecturer comes to the rescue. That's at noon on KPBS Radio. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll be back here again tomorrow night. Have a great evening.